The sky so far, but I can't lose it.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. Keep high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Oh, you're gonna get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
A new beginning with familiar faces. For the first time, Lionheart is going back to its roots. 18 races to determine who is the best and the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-an-hour Indy cars, inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one inaugural champion, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by DMLC Racing Channel, starts now.
The Lionheart Racing Series and its Speedway Series, presented by the DMLC Racing Channel, has traveled from the Granite State to the land of Lincoln for one of the most pivotal races of 2021 so far. Barrett Rolfe, Alexis Newsom, and Tony Shalwin all enter Chicagoland Speedway separated by just 10 points. And with the title fight being so razor thin amongst the frontrunners, the Windy City could be where the title can be blown wide open. Will that be the case by the end of the night? We're about to find out. This is the HyperX 200 at Chicago. Hello everyone and welcome to racespottv and ESTV for coverage of the Lionheart Racing Series, powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com and don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. My name is Justin Prince. Alongside me in the booth tonight is Andrew Kinsella for today's coverage with Juna Kankipati in the producer's seat. You can follow along with live timing and scoring thanks to our partners at ATVO to follow along with your favorite teams and drivers in the virtual world of motorsport. Let's dive into our sim experience countdown to green and what's expected to be an exciting race today, Andrew. This could be pivotal as we enter the closing stages of the season.
Absolutely, Justin. This is going to be incredibly important for all of these drivers to get a good, clean race in here. Chicagoland is a tough track, especially in the DW12. You're going to look at side-by-side racing throughout the field today, and it's going to be a tough ask for these guys to stay clean and stay focused on that championship, and what a championship battle it'll be as we shape up for this closing stretch of the season here.
It's been exciting to say the very least this campaign. Of course, for those just tuning in, last race was New Hampshire. That was a thrower. And of course, Chicagoland starting what is going to be a busy stretch from Chicagoland to Pocono to Iowa all the way to Charlotte over the next 4 races. But let's take a look at your driver standings presented by the DMLC Racing Channel for its 2 rookies. Barrett Rolfe, Alexis Newsom separated by 5 points. Tony Shaw and Matt Taylor round up the top 4. Alexander Van de Sant rounding out the top 5 in the standings, Andrew. It's been tight all season.
It's been incredibly tight. You can see 10 points between first and third place right now. Everything is still to play for in this championship. We still have 6 races here to go, plus one here today. Oh, I can't wait to get this party started. But first of all, we've got to say, look at all of these rookies in the top 10. Rolfe, Newsom, Taylor, Van de Sant, Malechka, and Musselman down in P10 here. The rookies have really been trading paint with the veterans today, and it's really shown so far this season.
It's definitely shown, and it's been impressive, some of the performances they've done throughout this campaign. Let's take a look at your team standings presented by HyperX, and Adrenaline Motorsports has been dominant so far this campaign, Andrew, but Team Race First Red, they're starting to close that deficit along with Factory Backed and Team Race First Black that was fairly significant just a few rounds ago.
Absolutely. Adrenaline has that veteran presence with Stouffer, Shaw, and Branch, and I think that was their advantage early on in the season, but you see that being a veteran only lasts for so long, and some of those rookies are starting to get that experience needed to catch back up and see how their performances day in, day out really affect these team standings, and you're seeing Team Racehorse and Factory Backed really stepping up their game here.
Some great performances when it comes to those camps over the past few races, and keep in mind, a lot of the rookies have been front runners week in, week out throughout this campaign. It's going to be exciting how that plays out. Your rookie standings presented by buttkicker, and it's very helpful for many of these drivers when a lot of the season's top competitors have been rookies. Rolfe, Newsom, Taylor, Van de Sant, Malechka, Fowler among the rookies who are up there in the standings for the rookie side.
Yeah, and just as we have a really tight battle in the main standings, we have an equally tight battle here in the rookie standings as well. Anyone in the top 4 really still has a legitimate shot at this. One bad race from any of these drivers could result in a severe penalty and potentially an insurmountable hurdle for them to overcome. So, again, it's got to be really clean from here on out for all of these rookies.
Separation is about 170 points from first to 10th spot. Matt Wagner, the final of those positions, with Charles Teed, his Dark Horse Motorsports teammate, just in front. It is tightly packed for what has been a very impressive rookie class this year for the Speedway Series. Now, let's take the opportunity to look at your series details presented by Minus 273. Minus 273 is the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable spandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. Don't forget to also use Minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off orders. And of course, today we are using the Dallara DW12 for this event, Andrew. It's a car that brings a lot of great racing action. Talk us through how these drivers will be dealing with the custom fixed setups today.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of these drivers are on basically the same setup that I've put together here, and it's going to be a tough ask for them, to be quite honest. This track is a very unique track in that there's very little actual straightaways here. Even the back straight is somewhat curved, so you're basically turning for the whole time that you're in a lap here, and it shows in how the fixed setup is constructed, and it means that they're going to be very tight together through most of the run, and then you'll see sort of as the run goes on, maybe the last 10-15 laps of the run, you're going to have to start lifting in those corners and start managing that aero push that starts to come into play. And it's going to be a tough ask for these drivers to really adapt from being that foot to the floor for the first half and then starting to lift for the second half. So it should be a very interesting race here today.
Keep in mind, Andrew Kinsella just so happens to be the setup builder for this series, along with the rest of Lionheart sanctioning-bodied events. So it's very critical, some of that knowledge that's picked up from some of these competitors throughout the practices. But throughout the history, when it comes to Chicagoland and Lionheart competition, there have been plenty of races in 150-mile distances. This year, 200 miles. This is also home, just so happens to be the closest finish in NTT IndyCar history. That was back in 2002. Closest margin of victory in the DW12 and Lionheart competition was about 0.3 of a second. The closest overall, 0.025 seconds. And we may get any mixture of a type of race today, from a caution-free event like in Season 1 for competitors to the 8 that happened in Season 2, Andrew.
Yeah, but I will say I do have faith in these drivers. They've shown time and time again this year that even with setups where you could potentially see a lot of cautions coming in, they've done a great job of keeping it clean. There's a lot of respect in this group of drivers, so I'm cautiously optimistic that we will see closer to that fewest caution mark than that most caution mark.
Keep in mind as well, lead changes were apparent in Season 5 with the DW12. 25 was that lead change record. That close finish as well was between Dan Guerin and Christopher. Guerin took the checker flag in that event. But today, of course, brings us to Chicagoland Speedway, a circuit with a lot of great history over its years. Of course, opened in 2001, Andrew, and while today has not been a track where it hosts tracks as of 2021, it's been one that has been a host to NASCAR stock car events. It has also seen open wheel action over its time throughout its history. It's an exciting racetrack that brings a lot of unique characteristics to it.
Absolutely, and we talked about a little bit about that already, but as you mentioned, it's one of those tracks where it just breeds close finishes. You saw that even some of the farthest finishes that we've seen here is 0.3 of a second. So it's really going to be one of those races, I think, where we're going to see close, tight racing, especially up at the front of the field, and I'm very excited to get this going and see what we have in store here.
These drivers now wrapping up their final practice. The fastest driver in that session was AJ Musselman with a 25.482 with the help of the pack. Paul Jenkins, Chris Fowler, Vern Hopkins III, and Matt Taylor was that top 5. But qualifying is underway for our competitors in what's expected to be a very cool race. Keep in mind our weather conditions are mostly cloudy skies today, Andrew. 73 degrees Fahrenheit the air temp, that's 23 degrees Celsius, 39 Celsius the track temp, 102 Fahrenheit. So fairly chilly air temperatures with those clouds.
Yeah, the air temperature is pretty cool, but again, the track temperature isn't that cool right now. It will cool down as the race goes on, and the drivers will have to adapt to that. But you are going to see a little bit of tire wear still. You're going to see a lot of sliding around as the tires go off. So I wouldn't say that the conditions right now are perfect, but they are going to start favoring closer racing as the race goes on.
As these drivers make their way around the racetrack, there are a couple of competitors who will have EOL penalties to serve here at Chicagoland. Alexander Van Descent had avoidable contact, his second avoidable contact of the year. Ended up seeing him get a 5-race probation, minus 10 in the championship points, as well as an EOL for this round. Trevor Malone also had his first avoidable contact of the campaign. He'll also have to start at the rear of the field. But one of the first drivers on track for qualifying is Ron Hacker who's already put in a 26.261. And Andrew, when it comes to qualifying here, how do you try and set up the perfect lap to get yourself high up on that board?
I think the big thing here is momentum. You want to use that first lap. You have 2 laps here to qualify, and you want to use that first lap to really gain that momentum, get yourself as fast as you can over the start-finish line, and then it's all about hugging that white line. So you see Barrett Rolfe here, he's going high on his first lap in his warm-up lap, and then you're going to see him sort of cut down once he goes through his warm-up lap. This should be lap 1, so yeah, he'll stay high, build up as much momentum as he can, and then once he hits that white line as he starts lap 2, that's when it's on, and he's got to nail that. You want to put it just above that white line, but you can't get too close to that white line, because if you clip it, your lap is basically done, and because he's taken that high line through 1 and 2, his first lap isn't that good.
First time around does indeed come up to be a 26.197. Vern Hawkins III has the best time overall with the 25.765. We'll see if this second lap does indeed get him those 4 or 5 tenths he needs. Through the final corner, Barrett Rolfe with 2 minutes remaining in session, right next to the edge of the grass, a 25.745, just behind Tony Shallon's 25.722. For Rolfe, that's one of his best qualified performances all season, Andrew.
Yeah, Barrett Rolfe's got to be thrilled by this. Every race, it seems like, we've seen him having to carve his way up through the field, and it's just a different type of race when you start at the front of the field. And particularly in a race like this, where there's going to be a lot of coming and going, a lot of give and take, having that advantage of starting near the front where it's just that little bit quieter, it's going to be a big advantage for Rolfe, and I think that we're going to see something special from him. But another one that we might be able to see something special from here is Alexis Newsom. She's done a great job so far this year, and she knows how to qualify. She knows how to put it up near the front, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what she can do here on her flying laps.
For Alexis Newsom, 1 pole on the campaign. Just so happens that Factory Back has combined 4 poles on the campaign. Robert Molechka III has 3 of those poles in the season, so that camp knows how to get up to the front. See where Newsom lies here in qualifying. Under a minute to go in session. 18 drivers have put in qualifying time separation, 7 tenths of a second. Newsom looking to try and get up to the top of the board. It's a 25.709. Nick DeGroot tops Alexis, though. Nick DeGroot looking to join the Factory Back pole sitters. My goodness.
And look at that separation. We have 14 drivers within just a couple tenths here. It's incredible the amount of consistency that these drivers are showing as they're qualifying here.
And just as you started that sentence, Robert Molechka III also put in a time that, how about this, was 1/1000th of a second slower than Nick DeGroot's time. So Nick DeGroot scores his first pole of the season, and Factory Back gets a 1, 2, 3. It's time to look at your starting grid. Your starting grid presented by buttkicker. And a big day for Factory Back. 3 drivers covered by 0.029 seconds. It's DeGroot, Molechka III, Newsom, your top 3 for the organization. Charles Teed starts in 4th today, with Joe Branch and Matt Wagner rounding out the top 6. Luis Gonzalez Nunez with one of his best starting positions of the year in 7th. Tony Shallon gets shut for the 8th towards the end of the session. Matt Taylor and Chris Fowler round out the top 10. Keep an eye on Fowler. He's had some good speed in recent weeks in Lionheart sanctioned competition. Barrett Rolfe starts in 11th with Alex Gouillon in 12th position, the highest of the independents, with Craig Forsyth in 13th. Chris Stouffer starts 14th with Vern Hawkins III and Paul Jenkins rounding up the top 16. Ron Hacker starts in 17th. George Anzaldo starts 18th. The last 2 drivers to take times are Dean Mall and Brian Beard. Keep in mind, Brian Beard had a crash in qualifying. He clipped the grass moments after the start and finish line on his second lap. That sees him start towards the rear end. AJ Musselman and Alexander Van der Sande have grid slots 21 and 22. Alexander Van der Sande has an EOL to serve. Jeff Gion starts 23rd, and Trevor Malone 24th amongst our starters. Matt Houston starts 25th, and Mike Rigney rounds out the 26 competitors who have made their way to the Windy City. And these drivers now rolling their cars to the starting grid tonight, Andrew. Your keys to victory if you want to take the checkered here.
I think number one, you've got to keep your nose clean. This is a long race. Patience is going to be a virtue. It's going to be very tempting to try and mix it up early and get as much track position as you can, but I don't think track position is going to be that valuable that early on. I think that the best strategy that these guys can follow, especially if you're a guy like Alex Van de Sant, is to just sit there and be patient, let the race come to them. It's a long race, settle in, and just be there at the finish.
Let's take a look at your featured onboards for tonight. First, Georgia and Soto has the HyperX on board. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows. We're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. The Sim Experience on board tonight is Barrett Rolfe. Sim Experience, makers of the AccuForce Pro V2 direct drive steering system. For more information, visit simexperience.com. The Graphics Esports onboard camera is carried by Chris Fowler. Graphics Esports, world-class design from the real world to virtual. Visit graphicsesports.com. And Alexis Newsom will carry the Espo Designs onboard camera. Espo Designs, get yourself a racing identity. That's a look at your featured onboard cameras for today. We have cameras throughout the entire pack for what's expected to be a thrower from the Windy City. Andrew, who are you keeping your eye on the most here for this start coming up?
I think the Barrett Rolfe, he actually fell down a little bit further than we thought. He's starting 11th here. Chris Stouffer is going to be very entertaining to watch. And Alex Van de Sant coming from the back, what is he going to do to try and make up some spots here early?
All of the drivers are ready to go from Chicagoland Speedway. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart, and this is the start of the HyperX 200 at Chicago. We're underway from Chicagoland.
A nice clean start so far. They're starting to string out just a little bit, but I expect that they'll be coming right back together very quickly here.
Was about to say, the factory back drivers quickly got single filed out for that first lap down the back straightaway, but it's Nick DeGroot who leads lap 1. Trying to break up that train on the bottom line is Joe Branch. He's tucked right in behind DeGroot along the white line, all while some of your championship competitors are getting near contact in the heart of the pack.
And we've already got two distinct packs starting to form. We had some 3-wide action in the back here, and it's created some real separation between the two packs. I don't know if they've actually broken the draft yet, but if the second pack doesn't get themselves sorted out quickly, it very well could turn into a 2-pack race here very early.
Already that separation about 8 car lengths from the first pack to the second pack, as you see the front group now sorting themselves out once more. Newsom trying to stay on the high side. That's because Joe Branch is not giving up easily here, Andrew. That Adrenaline Motorsports machine is trying to break up all these teammates up front.
Yeah, Joe Branch is part of a strong team himself, and he knows exactly what having 3 teammates at the front means. And if he can get himself in that mix there and break up that stranglehold that they have at the front, he knows that that's valuable this early on, just to try and start to dictate the pace himself a little bit rather than letting factory back do all the work.
We're on board with Matt Wagner, who has already lost 3 positions from the drop of the green flag. And it seems like, at the very least, the bottom line seems to be paying off for the most part. But you almost want to carry that momentum on the corner exits. It seems very tricky to pick out which line's going to work best today.
Yeah, I do think that having a little bit of clean air on your nose is going to be a big benefit. The bottom line is the fastest way around because it's the shortest way around. But the trick with that is you have to be able to keep your foot in the gas throughout the entire time. If you're having a lift on the bottom line, then you might as well be on the top line, foot to the floor, getting that momentum up.
Take a look from Alexis Newsom as Joe Branch takes away second fully. Nick DeGroot is blocking though. Nick DeGroot trying to hold off the run for Branch. Branch will take away the race lead into turn 3.
Yeah, and this is actually a little bit surprising from Branch. Normally Branch likes to sit back, but I think having started so far up in this grid, he wants to start to lead the race a little bit, and again, just break up that factory-backed stranglehold at the front, and he's done a great job so far.
Joe Branch this season, 4 top 5s, 4 top 10s, and he hasn't led laps in the past few weeks, and now he's leading some here at Chicagoland. See right behind, Tony Schowen also is joining the fray. It's big contact in the front. We're under caution for the first time tonight. Alex Guillon, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, several others collected after a massive incident in the heart of the pack.
Looks like Chris Stouffer also involved there. Yeah, one of those unfortunate incidents that can happen in the pack. It just looked like there wasn't a lot of give and take. Stouffer and Nunez very close. Maybe a little bit of net code where Nunez sort of got into the car on his outside a little bit, bounced down into Stouffer. Really unfortunate this early on in the race.
See the viewpoint from Guillon, who's already now scored 25th. Nowhere for him to go. Hard contact in the wall. 3+ cars already taking toes with this incident. We're not even 10 laps into the race.
Yeah, and I've been there in Guillon's shoes where something happens in front of you and you just have nowhere to go, and it's so heartbreaking because you know you did nothing wrong. There's nothing you could have done to avoid it, and it ends your day so early. It's heartbreaking, but that's racing sometimes.
And mixed pit stop calls here, Andrew, because here's how razor thin the fuel margin is. For today, the projected fuel windows were seen to go as late as lap 123. This may be a beneficial call for Chris Fowler, Trevor Malone, Robert Wutchka III, and several others taking fuel this time.
Yeah, I do like this call, to be quite honest. I don't think that we're done with the cautions yet, and it'll only take a few more laps of caution flags for them to be able to make it. That being said, there is something to be said for track position, particularly for some of the guys at the back. So a few of the guys who did stay out, I like that call as well, but for these guys, if it goes their way, and it can easily go their way from here on in, this is a very good call in my books.
Again, drivers were projected to make it 39 to 41 laps on the gas for this race today. 8 drivers elected to stay out. Of note, Trevor Malone actually missed his pit stall in that window. But it's Branch, DeGroot, Schowen, Newsom, Rolfe, Teed, Wagner, Jenkins who stay out. Alexis Newsom actually coming in this time.
Now that's actually a very interesting call. If I were her, I would have stayed out, to be quite honest. If you commit to that strategy, you should commit fully. Coming in this lap, that's put her really far behind. So despite her maybe being able to make it from here, I would have liked to see her stay out and either fuel save or just embrace the strategy that she's on. This one, it's going to be difficult to make her way all the way back up through this alone. So it's a curious call to give up that track position and now be at the back of the field, in my opinion.
Paul Jenkins also elected to come on down with the 1-to-go signal now on the iRacing pace car. So it's Branch, DeGroot, Schowen and Rolfe, Teed, Wagner, Moechka III, Bauer, Taylor, Forsyth. Now your top 10 in this race. And the interesting note when it comes to Jenkins is he was 1 lap short of winning in the Lionheart Retro Series on fuel at Iowa just a few days ago. Keep that in the back of your mind as Jenkins was so close to coming away with a critical victory in that one. Drivers now all set to go for the restart. Coming to the end of lap 10, Joe Branch in control of the field. We're back underway from Chicagoland. Nice clean start this time for all the drivers as Joe Branch quickly makes his way to the bottom. Nick DeGroot, Tony Schowen stay close in the battle for second.
Yeah, so we saw Factory Back dominating earlier, but we now have the 2 remaining Adrenaline Motorsports cars, 1 and 3 here, with Nick DeGroot splitting in between the 2 of them. This could turn into an Adrenaline-dictated race rather than a Factory Back dictated race.
Look at Barrett Rolfe, though. He wants to take away some of these positions from the high line. Barrett Rolfe up 8 spots. Now takes away the 3rd position. And for Barrett Rolfe, he has been very competitive this season. 4 top 5s, 8 top 10s, and a victory. He looks to dart his way up inside the top 2. A big pocket of air as he gets checked up behind Branch.
Yeah, and what you're seeing here is there's actually 3 distinct lines here at Chicagoland. There's a bottom, a middle, and a top. The top is really only sort of your emergency, I have nowhere else to go line. Generally speaking, you can't make the full pass along on that 3rd line. You might be able to get one person who gets hemmed in, like Rolf did, and Shaun is going around the outside here. But those 2 bottom lines are where you want to be for the most part around Chicagoland here.
Nick de Groot, though, now utilizing that 2nd line to try and get the run for the race lead back. The 89 machine, can he get fully clear? No. Joe Bridge stays alongside, stays side by side, now 3 rows deep. You see your track map. Everyone very tightly packed together. The separation from the first car to the 23rd car on that grouping is about 5 seconds. There are a little bit of breakups starting to form up amongst them, though. About half a second between the 6th and 7th place cars currently.
Yeah, it's interesting that it seems like the cars that were on the older tires have actually broken away here a little bit. It might be that they haven't used up enough of the tires, and the fuel advantage that they've got right now is sort of stringing out the pack a little bit here. But the one good thing that the trailing pack does have in their favor is they are very organized, and they're just sort of working the draft, and they're not fighting with each other too much, whereas this lead pack, you can see they're 3 wide into turn 3 right now.
3 wide with Nick de Groot up the middle. De Groot gets the better launch out of the 3. De Groot will lead up the stripe that time by, with Barrett Rolf barely getting to 2nd position. Now back 2 wide, and Charles Teed also rides in this grouping. Robert Mochka III, keep in mind, is the first of the drivers who took tires and fuel in the last pit stop. He is lined up on the bottom line. That just flip-flopped, though, because Chris Fowler just passed him.
Yeah, Fowler and Malechka are in very good positions right now. They're right up in that lead group. And you're seeing all the way back to about 14th or 15th there is another sort of gap in the field after, I think it's Dean Mall. Alex Van Zandt has fortunately worked his way up from his EOL penalty, I think it was 23rd starting position, all the way up to 15th. So we're seeing good progress from him as well. But we really, for them, they want to see this pack here that we're seeing on screen. They've got to stop fighting, or else that front pack is gonna get away. And this early in the race, if we do go green, that could be very problematic for them as the race works through its strategy, as we almost have some contact there. Wow, that was close.
Matt Wagner already has a crushed side pod in that too, Andrew, so that fighting's not only hurting them a ton, that's going to make things excessively worse if you're Wagner here too, with how much contact he's now had to that right side. He pushes up the racetrack this time as several more dart to his inside.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you get that side pod damage. You do just pick up a little bit of a push, and there's almost nothing you can do about it. It's unfortunate. You just can't afford to be that aggressive this early in the race. Yes, you are starting to lose the draft a little bit, but you can't panic. And I think that there was a little bit of panic from Wagner there. It was very close racing for how early we are in this race. Only 21 laps out of 134 so far.
As we were keeping up with what was going on in that pack, Barrett Rolf has taken the race lead. He got a big run down the back straightaway just a couple laps ago, and now he's got clean air in the midst of this run, with de Groot, Shaun, Teed, and Fowler rounding up the top 5 for the time being. But keep in mind, they are fighting for 4th on back still, as another swap for the lead. De Groot got the run to rip it away from Rolf.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Rolf and de Groot can start working together, or they're going to continue fighting. And Tony Shaun is another one who still wants to be up in that front, trying to lead here. So it'll be interesting to see whether this front pack starts to work together a little bit, sees that they're breaking away, or whether they're just more focused on leading personally, and it might end up costing them in the long run.
And for de Groot, he hasn't visited victory lane yet this season in this series. The closest he's gotten, 4th place at Kentucky, and that was a part of what was, for much of the race, a factory back 1, 2, 3 until Van de Zandt rolled the strategy dice. Looking on board with Fowler. Looking like his tires are starting to come into play a little bit, Andrew, because he's starting to slice and dice with these leaders going back and forth, with Shaun wanting to take the point.
Absolutely. Yeah, and particularly early in this race, while the track is still pretty hot, the tires are going to create a substantial advantage for those guys who did come in. It looks like, as you said, the tires are starting to go off for those guys who stayed out. It's now 25 laps, even though we did have a few of them under caution. It wasn't very many, as Rolf really pushes close to the wall out of 2 there. That was really close, but he kept it out. Great job from Rolf. But this pack has still maintained that gap to Hawkins and Forsyth, who are trying to close and trying to cooperate, but I don't know whether they'll be able to actually make it back at this point.
New race leader, Chris Fowler at the stripe. And now the fresher tires trying to hold on with the draft coming from behind from Tony Shaw and Nick DeGroot, Barrett Rolf still. But to loop back towards that grouping you were talking about, the separation is nearly 1 second between 7th and 8th position already, as a result of some of that infighting we've seen earlier.
Yeah. Oval racing, particularly at a place like Chicagoland where the draft is so important, it's very cerebral. It's very much, yes, you're going around a track and you're trying to hit your marks as best as you can. You also have to be constantly thinking about the strategy, about what your car's doing, what the other cars are doing around you, and how best to maximize not just the move that you could be making, but how do you get all the way up to that front of the field like Chris Fowler was able to do. And we've seen that a few of the guys, such as Fowler, are really good at working their way through the field, but a few of the guys maybe need to work on this as this race goes on if they want to have a chance at winning this.
Keep in mind, it shouldn't be a shock to see Chris Fowler up towards the front. For the past month or so, it's like he's gone from very bad luck, Andrew, at least from my perspective in Lionheart sanctioned competition, to coming close to several victories. He came close in that Retro Series race at Iowa. He was a contender at New Hampshire in the Speedway Series. He's been able to catch a ton of momentum as we see the battle for 12th.
Yeah, Van de Sant has worked his way all the way up to 12th, so he's worked his way through the field. He's working with Jorge Anzaldo here. They are a little bit back off the cars in front of him, so Van de Sant, now that he's gotten to the front of this pack, he's got to be focusing forward here and saying, okay, how can I get myself up to the next pack? Because we know that Van de Sant is going to be fast here, and he's thirsty to get through that field and make up for that EOL here.
And keep in mind, he was your winner at Kentucky with the help of fuel strategy, and that was an improbable win when it happened, Andrew, to stretch it 45 laps twice to be able to take home that checkered flag. It's been up and down since then.
Yeah, but Van de Sant is one of those drivers that excels on ovals like this one, where, as I mentioned, you have to be very cerebral. You have to think out your moves, and think about which battles you're going to fight, which battles you're not. Van de Sant picked the fuel mileage, and he did it perfectly at Kentucky. It'll be interesting to see whether he uses a similar tactic here, maybe with fuel mileage, or maybe he goes about attacking this race a little different.
Joe Branch, Charles Teed, and Vern Hawkins III are having a wrestling match. Meanwhile, for 6th spot, they have now lost the draft of your top 5 cars, 1 second behind, in fact. Charles Teed does not want to make it easy.
No, he really doesn't, and it's hurting both of them right now. And I know that Joe must be thinking, well, why is he doing this to me? Why is he doing this? But at the same time, Charles doesn't want to let these guys behind him close, because I believe Charles is one of those drivers who did not stop, and he knows that he's on those tires that aren't quite as fresh as everyone else, so he wants to be in front of Branch and use Branch as that buffer to the rest of the cars. So that's probably why he's fighting so hard to try and get in front of him, but it's costing them both, and it's cost them the lead draft at this point.
The only 2 drivers on the tire strategy who pit during the opening caution are Fowler and Moechka III. Everyone else is right in the thick of that fight. There is Moechka III, you see on the high line, trying to jump his way around Barrett Rolf. It seems like those runs are starting to die off a little bit now that the tires have a bit of wear with them. We were talking before the race, Andrew, where we were expecting the packs to break up a little bit like they have around this mark.
Yeah, so what will happen is that the tires, especially the front tires, just start to go away, and what you'll see is people will really start to be trying to search for that clean air and get the clean air on the wings, keep as much downforce in the car as possible. The more downforce you have, and the faster you'll be able to go through the corners. And you'll also see that high line. As you see, I think that was Vern Hawkins right up against the fence there. That high line is going to start coming in, and it'll be interesting to see who starts to venture out and really tries to keep their momentum up on the high side versus who's sticking to that bottom lane.
There's the view back to Charles Teed in 7th position. Joe Branch is broken away. Pit stops are closing in quickly too, keep in mind. For the drivers who stayed out under caution on lap 8 of this race, as Vern Hawkins III finally clears on by with his fresher tires here.
Yeah, and he went around the outside, kept his momentum up, and was able to get that overlap coming out at 2 and was able to clear Charles Teed there, and now he set his sights on Joe Branch. What we're really going to see once we see these pit stops come in, as you were mentioning, is just how big an advantage right now that the likes of Chris Fowler and Robert Malechka, the guys who didn't stop but were able to stay with that pack, they're going to be 1 or 2 seconds in front of everyone else on their strategy. So that's the fact that Fowler was able to stay with the lead pack and work his way up to the front is really going to benefit him here.
What's going to really hurt, though, for the drivers 12 on back is they're not really gaining time, Andrew, even with them starting to work together a little bit. As you see from the HyperX onboard cam, trying to line up a little bit. They've been going back and forth between Anzotto and Van de Sant amongst those cars. They have Alexis Newsom mixed in here as well. They are losing about half a tenth to a tenth a lap in some cases when they're trying to do this. And in some cases, they have picked some of that time back up, but they just have continuously bled time. 1.3 seconds back.
Yeah, and I think it's just a case where they're not quite connecting on what they want to do. It looks like Van de Sant would really like to swap with George, but I don't know that George really has an interest in doing that swapping right now. I think maybe if Newsom was able to clear George and get up to Van de Sant, they might be able to drag this pack back up towards the pack in front. But with George just sort of trying to run his own race here, it's not letting them really catch back up very quickly.
Back up towards the front. Malechka III still trying to find a way around Barrett Rolfe. These drivers are losing themselves time to the top 2 now of 3/10. Malechka III getting clear on by, yes. Malechka III had to nearly seesaw across the front nose, all while Tony Schoen tries to drive to the outside to try and rip away the race lead, while, keep in mind, having to pin in the next couple laps.
Yeah, very close racing between these two, but a lot of respect as well, so that's good to see. Both Tony and Chris, they're veterans of the Lionheart Series and are very good. As we have our first pit stop, who's that? That is Nick DeGroot.
Nick DeGroot and Matt Wagner nearly drove into the grass trying to make sure he got to the commitment cone. More calls to pit coming over the radio from across the pack for this time by, expecting Schoen and several more to dart on in. There's Tony Schoen, in fact, right now. Nice and smooth right up against that yellow line, and this could be a fairly tricky pit entry if you don't time it up right and call it out right.
Absolutely, and one of the trickiest parts is you actually have to get on the brake before you transition from the banking to the apron, and it can really upset the car if you get that wrong. So it's a little bit of a gamble for these guys having to pit early. Like, obviously they had to because of their pit strategy, but they're going to be a lap down here, and it exposes them to the risk of possibly falling victim to an ill-timed caution here, which is a very distinct possibility.
So it's about a 9-second stop. You see at the bottom of your screen for Tony Schoen into the pit lane as well on the track map. Barrett Rolfe in for service. That completes all the drivers who had to take pit stops who did not go in under the first caution. The other drivers, though, do have to come in about 4 to 7 laps for their scheduled pit stops next.
Absolutely, and you can see here how big a gap that Fowler and Malechka have on the rest of their strategy. But just going back to Tony Schoen for 1 second, but I think both he and Ralph really came out in a really good position here. What they are is just off the back of the field with new, fresh tires. So if Tony and Barrett can really draft up and use the draft here, they could potentially get really far with an undercut here and stretch out over the likes of Fowler and Malechka if they play their cards right and if the draft works. But they have to be praying for no caution here.
See Rolf now on the bottom side of the racetrack on the Sim Experience onboard camera. Has indeed caught up to the draft. Currently is scored in front of Rolf by nearly 2 seconds. And it's Fowler and Malechka the third, who have now started to run away even more now after these stops from Hawkins the third, Taylor, Forsyth and company. They picked up 3/10 in the past 2 laps, Andrew.
Yeah, and this is what tandem drafting can really do. So you're seeing that Fowler and Malechka are working really well together, and Hawkins is really sort of on his own island, and he really can't do anything to bridge that gap here. As we see, I think Fowler has made the call, and he is coming into the pits right now.
Chris Fowler has made the commitment cone, as well as several more. Ducking down this time for
George Anzaldo, I think, missed the pit in, or almost missed the pit in.
Could have been very close indeed, and we talked about how Deceptic could be on the entry, and Zoldo nearly went off on the apron, trying to make his way towards the commitment cone. Did make it underneath, however, for the service, as more pit stop calls coming over the radio this time from drivers such as Trevor Malone. One air car, Alexander Van de Sant, just hit the commitment cone on their entry. But here's what you saw with Anzaldo, Andrew, and talk us through this.
Yeah, so he is sort of halfway between the apron and the track, and it's really the worst position he can be in because you don't really have good grip on either place, and the brakes just weren't working, as you could see, and he just barely got back down and slowed down enough to make it on the pit road there.
So Anzaldo still able to complete said service, now score 22nd for the time being. Fowler right now has been able to come out in front of Tony Schowen by only about 6/10 or so. AJ Musselman currently the buffer car between them. More service for Robert Malechka the third. This time, Malechka the third able to stretch 44 laps.
But Barrett Rolfe, importantly, is in front of both Fowler and Schowen right now. So Rolfe really was able to use that draft as I was describing earlier, and he's made, I believe, about a 1 to 1.5 second gap on Chris Fowler right now.
Yes, you're right about that, absolutely. With the difference on cycles, though, it's going to be interesting how things play out. It's a 5-lap difference on the field marks between Rolfe and Fowler. After the service, Malechka the third is also going to be a conversational point, because Malechka the third is coming off the pit lane now. Where will he cycle in the factory back machine? Rolfe tries to pick up the draft from Malechka the third. Rolfe drives on by to take over the overall race lead, with Malechka the third close behind.
Yeah, so Malechka's got to be very happy about his pit stop and his pit cycle there, because he made up about half a second on the likes of Chris Fowler and Tony Schowen and finds himself in a very good position here. Chris Fowler also, I think, is feeling a little bit lucky here because he's firmly in Malechka's draft and Malechka is in Rolfe's draft. So where Fowler might not have had the draft before, now he will be able to get a little bit of a sniff from Malechka and hopefully get all the way back up to Barrett Rolfe in first.
And the groupings have separated out a little bit as a result of the pit stops. Fifth is now a good near 2 seconds behind Tony Schowen. Joe Branchford Hawkins, the third, Alexander Van de Sant trying to close in on the group. 1.3 seconds the deficit to the factory back driver. So now it's become groupings of 3 to 5 compared to the groupings of 8 to 10 we've seen early.
Yeah, and before we go into that, just look at, I just want to highlight that Van de Sant is actually in 8th place right now. So he was, I think, 12th or 13th coming into that pit cycle. So he must have had a fantastic pit cycle to get all the way up to Joe Branch, where he was back with George Anzaldo, who was nearly 3 seconds back from where he was. So just a phenomenal pit cycle from Van de Sant working his way through this field. But basically what you're seeing with these sort of broken up packs here is right now everybody's got to be thinking, let's work together, let's do what we can to get back into this race. Whether it was maybe we weren't so good at the end of that last run and we dropped back, or maybe we didn't have the best pit cycle. now is the time to use the fresh tires, use those small packs of 2 or 3, and really sort of work together and get yourself into a good position here towards the end of this race. Because one of the things that having this strung out field means is it's much less likely that a caution is going to pack everything back up again.
Keep in mind, Barrett Rolf has a good chance to save fuel here too with how things have sorted out to try and get closer to the field marks of much of the third Fowler and company. Now being able to ride on behind. It's worth noting the last car on the lead lap now is Alexis Newsom, who had a 19-second pit stop. For Newsom, not the sequence that she may have wanted. You see a bit of a slide in the pit lane, a lengthy stop for Newsom. Sees her 24 seconds back.
Yeah, it looks like she missed the marks and wasn't able to find reverse there, and it cost her a good 5 or 6 seconds. And yeah, this race has sort of gone from bad to worse for her. She had that call to pit lane late in the first caution, and it really put her on the back foot. She got herself back up to about 14th, but now she finds herself right at the end of the field, and she's actually in danger, I believe, of getting lapped soon with the current lap time. So it's a really difficult position to be in because you really don't want to lose this lap, but I don't know that there's much she can do sort of on her own right now to fend off Malechka and Rolf.
See in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, that's the Sim Experience driver profile, being Alexis Newsom. In fact, 11 starts this season with 7 top 10s and 6 top 5s, 2 victories on the campaign, Andrew. There's been some great moments on strategy for Alexis. It's not been her day so far, but she's had some great flares of speed, whether it's been at Texas or whether it was her other victory of the season.
Absolutely, and if anyone can turn lemons into lemonade, I think Alexis has to be near the top of this list. She had a fantastic win earlier this season at, I believe it was Milwaukee, where she had played the fuel strategy perfectly. So if anyone can take this and make the best out of it, I think Alexis is near the top of that list of drivers.
Those wins actually back-to-back with Texas, in fact, as well. As you see the track map, we've seen everyone very tightly packed before, everyone very much spread apart. Already quickly approaching halfway, 71 laps to go that time by now at the stripe. And some of the bigger packs are the groupings for 10th on back with Beard, Teed, Hacker, and Enzotto. You also have a decently sized pack for 16th with Malone, Musselman, and Jenkins. You also have the grouping of 3 for 7th through 9th. Hawkins the 3rd, Van de Sande, and Matt Taylor. Matt Taylor, though, is just holding on to 1 second the distance amongst these cars. They also have Joe Branch, who is also in said group, 5.4 seconds behind. They are losing the 1/10 or so per lap to the race leaders.
Yeah, it looks like Vern Hawkins, I believe, is the car on the outside, he's not doing any favors by taking that high line. What needs to happen here is there needs to be a little bit of give and take between Branch and Hawkins and a little bit of cooperation if they want to start catching back up to Nick DeGroot. But unfortunately, Branch doesn't seem to want anyone in front of him, and Hawkins isn't really doing maneuvers that will win them any speed here. So if I'm Alex Van de Sande in this pack, I'm starting to get frustrated with these guys. He's got to be thinking, come on guys, just work together. Let's not lose any more time than we need to. Because Van de Sande has done a great job so far, and I would hate to see his progress stalled through this field because he can't get by these two, and he starts to lose more and more time here.
All this wrestling is losing him a lot of time to Groot and Shaolin, who are the next 2 cars up the road, who are separated by 1 second apiece. Again, Hawkins the 3rd trying to get the run towards the higher line. Joe Branch is on the slightly older tires in this car. This is all allowing Matt Taylor to just hold on barely to a whiff of draft as well. And all of this sequence as Hawkins the 3rd again high side. Van de Sande just looking like he's trying to choose the lesser of 2 evils, almost like was what with the clean air getting the middle line that time.
Yeah, there's almost nothing that Van de Sande can do here. he definitely doesn't have the momentum to be able to clear either of them if he goes to the high line, and Joe has been hugging that low line so well. There's almost nothing that he can do. Hawkins is finally in front, so if I was Van de Sande, I'd be looking to see maybe let's see if I can get past Joe, because I know that Joe is a guy who thinks strategy similar to me, so yeah, if I'm Van de Sande, I'm trying to get by Joe here and potentially swap with Vern if possible.
See if he ends up doing exactly that. Van de Sande goes up to the third line, now back down to the second line above and below those seams. Just trying to build up the run. And Matt Taylor picked up another 10th or two right before that lap. There's the move, exactly how you called it. Joe Branch letting off the second. Van de Sande went high, and Van de Sande actually getting side by side with Hawkins the third on this.
Yeah, and that's the run that you can get off the top if you can really... Oh, that's very close. Hawkins is running him up the track a little bit there. That's a little bit naughty if I'm going to be honest about that. A little bit too early to run him that far up the track, but that's the type of run that you can get from the high side, where you just keep the car spooled up, and especially if the car below you needs to lift a little bit, you can just get that run. So now what these guys really need to do is sort themselves out and start working together. They haven't been working together at all so far, so it could be that Van de Sande is going to just pull these guys around, and he's the fastest car, and he can drive them forward with his fresher tires, but they've got to figure out what's a faster way to do it than what we've been doing it so far, because so far it hasn't been working as they get close off of 2 again. Oh.
Yeah, this is not getting pretty. Near contact with the front wing, that time sliding up for Van de Sande across Hawkins the third. They now go back single file and again. Hawkins the third gets towards that right rear tire again, approaching 60 laps to go. Here from Chicagoland Speedway, you're watching RaceSpottv and ESTV for live coverage of the HyperX 200 at Chicago.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. Keep high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Oh, you're gonna get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
Welcome back to racespottv and ESTV's coverage of the Lionheart Racing Series and its Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel and the HyperX 200 at Chicago. Justin Prince alongside Andrew Kinsella, Arjuna Kakipati in the producer's seat for today's action in what has turned into an intriguing one. Various strategies were set off after an early caution flag, and now the pit window has opened up for its second time under green in this race. Tony Shallon, Charles Teed, Matt Wagner, and several others have now made their way towards the pit lane for scheduled stops. And here's the big mark that's coming up now. For the drivers who pit on the first caution window, they might not even make it then because they're only making it 38 laps right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you have this race that's sort of spread out, you don't get that fuel saving that you get in the pack. So some of these guys who pitted on that first caution, they must be thinking, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it here. They've got to make it to, I would say, at least lap 95 if they want to make it on one more stop. So you might be able to stretch it from lap 93 or so, but that's still 9 laps from now, and if we are already having guys coming down pit lane, it's going to be tight for them.
Vern Hawkins III came in on 34 laps of the stint. She on 33 laps. Joe Branch did make it to 40, but that's not close enough with 50 to go. Coming up to 49 to go this time. Barrett Rolfe has now indicated he needs to pit. He made it 41 laps and was one of the drivers who stayed out. Start of the race as he nearly drips his way towards the commitment cone. The interesting question mark for me, Andrew, though, is for the drivers who have saved, is it even going to be enough? Matt Taylor, we noticed during the commercial break, was able to save a decent amount by clutching in the corners.
Yeah, but if you're desperate enough to clutch on an oval, then that means that you're very, very marginal. And the fact is that Taylor doesn't have that draft of that pack that he was in before, as Branch and Hawkins have both pitted already. So it's going to be very tight by the looks of things here.
Yeah, he was using a lot of the clutching, mainly when they were doing the side-by-side fighting in front. Barrett Rolfe has completed his service. Nick Groot also came in 5 laps ago for a very early pit stop for the factory back machine. Rolfe currently the first of the net drivers who have now come in for service. Looking now to George Enzotto, he's up to 6th with some of these pit stops now coming into play. He's brought Ron Hacker, Craig Forsyth, Dean Mull into the top 10 with them for the time being. All those drivers are about 35 to 38 laps into a stint.
Yeah, but if any of the drivers in this is the type of pack that really needs to happen for any of those drivers that went long on that and pitted on that first stint. So what they need to see is more packs like that where they can sit 3rd or 4th car in line and potentially save enough fuel here. But I don't know that any of these guys are actually going to make it here.
Chris Fowler, you're seeing, has come on in. He was running on his own for a little while. 8.6 seconds for him. More calls coming from this grouping, including from Ron Hacker, who clips a little bit of the apron, going through 3 and 4. Trevor Malone trying to gain all his time on the entry, nearly ran into the back end of him.
That's what you call maximizing your pit in there. I think he did manage to get down, but it was close. But you can see he made up probably a good 2 or 3 seconds on Ron Hacker there, where Hacker had that bobble on pit in, and Malone really maximized it there. So good pit in from Malone. As we see, Robert Malechka, this is really the question mark that we have here, Justin, is can Malechka make it to that lap 93, 94, 95 area, or is he going to have to pit before then?
Running in clean air this entire time, albeit with a very tiny sniff of the draft from Alexis Newsom, who has been around 10-15 car lengths this entire stint in front. Malechka the third can't. He's indicated he's coming in this time by for pit stops. Newsom also coming in.
Yeah, so I think Newsom might be doing a little bit of team tactics here with Malechka and doing him a solid and potentially coming out right in front of him and giving him some draft. But it's going to be a very tall order to get that. I think it's 42, 43 laps from here. So it's going to be a tall order for Malechka to get there. But he might just be able to do it. Dean Mall, AJ Musselman, and Paul Jenkins are some other drivers who might just be able to stretch it.
And don't forget, among the drivers who topped off during that first caution, Paul Jenkins, who pulled a similar strategy at Iowa, and those competitors are going to be very tight to that magic number. Mall has kept on going this time by. Musselman has kept on going this time by. Paul Jenkins has kept on going. Barrett Rolfe has cycled 0.8 of a second in front of Malechka the third with the undercut by seven laps.
Yeah, and that's a key thing for Rolfe here, is because Rolfe definitely can't make it on fuel, but because he's that far in front of Malechka doesn't have a draft anymore. So I don't think that Malechka has any hope of making it without getting someone in front of him. So if he wants to stretch this far, he's going to have to really start lifting and get someone else in front of him, and he might even think about backing up behind Chris Fowler here and letting Fowler by if he wants to have any shot at making it all the laps that he needs to make it here.
Dean Mole has made it to the magic number with 39 to go. Let's take a look at a replay here. This is Newsom, who has had some bad moments with pit entry today. Let's see. Alexis Newsom picked up a speeding penalty, Andrew, to add insult to injury, and what has not been a good day on execution on that side.
No, it's really not. And it's just been the pit lane. If not for the pit lane, she would have been doing just fine in this race. But she's been fine on the track. She's had great pace, but it seemingly every time she's come to pit lane, something has gone wrong, whether it's a little bit questionable strategy or whether it's just messing up on that pit in. It's unfortunate, but sometimes these things happen, and when you get into that type of mentality and that sort of psyche, the pit lane can seem so daunting, and it just seems like mistake after mistake happen. So what she's really got to do now is just sort of put that all to the side. It's damage mitigation time, because she does definitely still have that championship to think about.
So the strategy dice are ever flowing around this racetrack. Amongst some of the battling going on, Tony Schowen lost a bit of ground on the track, just making some moves now, and drivers such as George Anzotto for the 10th position on circuit with the differences on strategy. And keep in mind, Dean Mall, who has a 17-second deficit to Barrett Rolfe at the moment, was the only driver, Andrew, who made it to lap 95. In the next grouping just behind this side-by-side choo-choo train.
Well, and look at this pack. This is the pack that no one really wants to lead right now. You saw that they basically, 1, 2, 3 cars took the outside lane through 1 and 2 to try and let Tony Schau and George Anzaldo by. And I think that a few of these guys are really trying to do that clutch and coast, lift as much as you can, and be in that draft. And this is the type of pack that they need. So the likes of possibly Matt Taylor is one, Brian Beard and George Anzaldo. They need to be drafting behind someone like Tony Schowen, and they've got a really nice pack here to do it.
See for the back end of the Adrenaline Motorsports machine, the different lines coming to play through the corners. All these competitors running 25, 7s, and 8s for the most part throughout the pack. George Anzotto wants to go, though, still. Trying to swap now to the bottom line to move back into 8th position. Still, keep in mind, Anzotto has more fuel on hand than Tony Schowen, as we see Nick DeGroot and Robert Malechka III now starting to work together with a massive difference on cycles. DeGroot for sure can't make it. Robert Malechka III needs to work with DeGroot here.
Yeah, and Malechka's lost 6 seconds to Barrett Rolfe since the pit stop sequence here, so he is definitely trying to make it here. He's now got his teammate in front of him, so it'll be interesting to see here whether DeGroot sacrifices a little bit for Malechka, keeps him in his draft for a little while, or whether DeGroot says, sorry, I've got to run my own race, and gets on after Fowler, because The only play that De Groot has if he wants to win this is to prevent his teammate like Malechka from actually making it to the end.
Funny how pace can handle, right? It was 1.3 seconds or so when Barrett Rolfe came out in front of Malechka the third. Malechka the third backs it down. Now Malechka the third has found a drafting partner and has picked back up the pace. The only thought I can think about is Robert Malechka III feels like that lost amount of time you'd have to think will not come back to bite him with Rolfe, Fowler, and the group all having to come down to pit. So it seems to be the call of sacrifice the time, make sure you get that extra bit of fuel, get that teammate like you're referring to.
Yeah, so the thing for Malechka to keep in mind is he's basically got 32, 33 seconds or so to fall back from Barrett Rolfe right now. The advantage of him being so far near the front of the field is that he has more time to save fuel here than the likes of George Anzaldo or Matt Taylor, who were 10 plus seconds back of Barrett Rolfe coming into that pit cycle. So Malechka does have the ability to save some fuel here, and it does look like his teammate De Groot is helping him out a lot here. So that's definitely a positive working in his direction. It's going to be very tight if he can make it or not.
Remember, if you can't, Dean Mall is still in 16th. You also had Paul Jenkins, AJ Musselman really stretch it, but the problem is those drivers are 19th and 20th. Looking at George Anzaldo and his group, they continue to bleed time compared to the race leaders, 1/10 per lap. Still try and swap around here with Matt Taylor close on behind.
Yeah, and I think that, as George hooks the apron there, and
that could have been worse for Anzaldo.
That was really close, and that is not a good place to try and get back onto the track. The apron is at a very awkward angle there. It looks like he just hooked the apron with his left side tires, and it sort of flung him down, and then he got all kinds of loose coming through on the apron there. But good car control, good save, but it's going to cost him a lot of time. I was just going to say before that incident that Matt Taylor is probably in the best position other than Mole and Malechka here. Matt Taylor is one of those guys who he knows how to save fuel, and he can probably stay behind Tony for a long portion of this race and just maybe make it on fuel here. So he's another guy. I'd say Malechka, Taylor, and Mole are the three guys that I'm really keeping an eye on right now.
Very nerve-wracking now, coming up to 25 laps to go this time by the number stripe. The majority of the pack now approaching 24. Once again, for those just tuning in, this has become a fuel mileage race and then some. Multiple strategies scattered throughout the field. Barrett Rolfe, Chris Fowler are in the teeter-totter range of not making it to the end without an additional stop. Nick De Groot for sure cannot make it on gas. Robert Malechka III is close to round out your top four positionings. Joe Branchford and Hawkins III are also going to be tight. Charles Teed has just had to pit. Joe Branch has also indicated he will have to come down. Tony Shalwin has also indicated he will come in this time.
And there's one more driver that we see on screen as we're watching Joe come in, but Alex Van de Sant is one of those drivers who's very marginal. He's on the same lap, or one lap further to go than Malechka, but he's been in the draft this whole time as well. So there's one more driver to put to the list that maybe he can pull off just another Kentucky-style win here.
Was about to say, do you think he can pull it off a second time?
If anyone can, watching him do those back-to-back 45-lap stints, I would have to go. Like, how can you bet against a guy who can do that? But the other thing here is, as we're seeing these stops, this is one more opportunity to make a mistake on pit entry or pit exit. So everyone who's trying to make it here has to be holding their breath. And a guy like Chris Fowler and Barrett Rolfe, they've got to be pedal to the metal and hoping to get back on the lead lap as soon as possible so that these pit stops don't bite them.
Rolf now making his way to the pit box. Right on the marks he goes. 33 now completing his service, so we'll need to close up an immense amount of ground. He did underfuel the car, it looks like, though. 8.1 seconds. Chris Fowler has also ducked down to the pit lane, so De Groot and Malechka III have now cycled to first and second.
Yeah, and so they only need 20 laps of fuel, so they will definitely be underfueling the car. But one thing to keep in mind here is that, as you see, Barrett Rolf actually comes out right with Robert Malechka and Nick De Groot here. So he very well could get his lap back on this next move right here, but he's going to be light on fuel and with new tires, and he's good to go on fuel. So this is pedal to the metal, and he's going to be probably the fastest car on track moving forward here. So I would say that Barrett Rolf, now that he's back on that lead lap and he's past Nick De Groot, he's in the catbird seat of everyone who has to pit. The question is, can he make up a full lap on Malechka, and does Malechka have to pit now?
I'm not quite sure. It's in 18 laps, though. He'd have to make that up. Is that realistic to make up a second a lap like that as we take a look at replay? Tony Schauwen, your teammate, had an adventure on the pit entry.
Yeah, that was not ideal from Tony, but he does just barely make that pit entry. Probably not how Tony drew that one up, and it's going to cost him probably a good 3 or 4 seconds, but oh, and he just barely... It's a good thing that Trevor Malone was as slow as he was there and paying attention, because that could have been even worse than it was, but they do a good job avoiding each other, and no harm, no foul, at least there.
Well, a very dicey pit entry sees Tony Schauwen now 16th. Nick De Groot has now come in for scheduled service, so Malechka III now on his own for the most part. Does have a bit of draft. The car's in front, but not too much.
Yeah, so here's the thing for Malechka, is he's not close enough to get a real effective draft here. So he's got 16 laps of basically being on his own. This is where potentially Barrett Rolf stands a chance of catching him, is because he's going to have to be lifting off, and you can see visually them just driving off into the distance here, as Malechka can't afford to go any faster than this. So this is where Rolf has a chance, is Malechka is going to be at least 1 second a lap slower than him. The question is it going to be enough? As Van de Sant is in the draft right now, and he looks like he's still going much closer to full speed.
They've already closed the deficit to about 2 seconds to Malechka III. And for the other drivers in a similar strategy call, there are some who are around the same lap range, who are 9 seconds back. Forsyth, Taylor, Dean Mall, who has the best chances in terms of the fuel numbers to make it to the end, is an 8th, 10 seconds behind. So overall, who do you think's in the best spot at this point with the differentials around the racetrack?
Oh, it's so tight. I think, like, Dean Mall, in terms of pure fuel, he's got enough to make it, and he's got enough to turn it up. So I actually think that he might pull a surprise out of everyone, a guy we barely talked about. He's right within a second and a half of Matt Taylor here, and I don't think that Malechka can go the full distance here without really getting into someone else's draft. So I'm actually going to say Dean Mall is probably in the best spot right now.
Stop indication over the radio for a couple drivers. Beard, Hawkins III, duck in this time. Van de Sant is 1.6 seconds behind Malechka III with 11 laps to go in the HyperX 200 at Chicago. And Mall has closed in half a second in the past 3 laps alone as well in the race leaders.
Yeah, Mall is coming, and he's had Ron Hacker in front of him for basically this entire run, so even if he was marginal on fuel, he's been able to draft up and stay in someone's draft and save some fuel that way. So, oh, this is going to be close. This is 10 to go now at the line. And Van de Sant, he's got to be thinking, somebody passed me. So there's a car behind me. You got to come around me, pass me, so that I can make it. But I can't see Malechka or Van de Sant making it at this point.
This is going to be very tense. 9 to go. This time by, looking at Matt Houston from the Team Race First Red Machine. Rides on behind, is a lap down though in 10th position. A plus 15. It's one of the drivers who are on a similar strategy as the 97. Ron Hacker had to tap out. He's now had to come in after 36 laps on his stint. 8 laps to go from Chicagoland.
8 laps and we still have no idea who's going to win this, who can make this on fuel. Malechka, I can't help but put myself in that cockpit and thinking, he's been on his own for so long. Does he have the fuel? He's got to see Van de Sant behind him and see that he can't lift off too much, but at the same time, he's got to make sure that he's hitting that fuel number, and it's going to be very touch and go for him here.
Bad news for Paul Jenkins. Technical issues from 6th position, and was also somebody who might have had a shot to make it. Just had it for several seconds, has just finally reappeared after a lengthy issue. He has closed up about a second, and the issues continue as you see for Jenkins. That could spell trouble and lose AJ Musselman, his drafting partner.
Yeah, so definitely not ideal for Jenkins here. Hopefully he comes back. He had a strong race going, but Malechka is still out there, and he's not losing very much time to Van de Sant or to Maul right now. Maul's closed up maybe a second on him. Rolf is only closed up to 19 seconds back, so jeez, this is all so tight. This is so tense. This is the type of race that fuel strategy can make. You're on pins and needles, and I promise you, in the cockpit, everybody is just sweating buckets here, just hoping that they can make it on fuel, and Forsyth and Van de Sant are the 2 guys on the move right now, I believe.
Forsyth needs to close up 5 seconds, though. And the problem is, Vern Hawkins III, who's in 11th position, is not making it easy with the lighter fuel load. With 4 to go now on the track, Matt Taylor looking to get the run on the high side, all while Malechka III still holds on to a growing gap now of 2.9 seconds over Van de Sant. 3 to go this time.
Robert Malechka, whatever he's been able to do with fuel, it's been an amazing thing. If he can make it on fuel here, this will just be a clinic on how to drive a fuel mileage race. He pushed right on at the beginning after he made that pit stop on lap 10. He pushed his way all the way up to the front, and then from there on in, he's been fuel saving and watching his fuel number. If he can make it here, this will be a clinic of how to drive a fuel save race at a 1.5 mile oval.
Robert Malechka III, it's been a very powerful season with speed, with qualifying pace, and with multiple victories. 3 in 7 starts. And now, it becomes the question, can he maintain the full pace for one more lap, final lap of the HyperX 200 at Chicago? He has picked up 3.3 seconds now over Van de Sant. He has to make it just one more set of corners to take home victory number 4.
He can coast from here, to be quite honest. At this point, with 4 seconds almost in pace, he can coast.
And he's got it. Robert Malechka III wins the HyperX 200 at Chicago.
Wow, what a drive from Robert Malechka. I didn't think that he had enough draft there throughout that last stint to make it work, but he did just enough to make it work. Incredible drive, incredible fuel-saving drive from Robert Malechka. Just did absolutely everything right, and hats off to him.
Robert Malechka III, his 4th victory of the campaign. What has been a stellar season for Factory Backed as a whole in the Lionheart Speedway Series. Van de Sant holds on to 2nd. Matt Taylor did take home the 3rd position, I believe. Fight with Greg Forsyth by a couple 100ths of a second. But in the end, just 7 drivers finish on the lead lap, but it's Robert Malechka III who gets to celebrate at Chicagoland. And it looks like he may have ran out of gas. Trying to celebrate here, Andrew. That's how tight it was.
Yeah, I think he was clutching and coasting just to be able to get back to the line and stop it. Great race from Robert, and hats off to Alex Van de Sant. Coming from the back, started P22, finishes second after having that EOL to start this race. That is the type of thing that can win you championships, where you have this curveball thrown your way at the beginning of the race and you turn that into a second place finish. Great drive from Van de Sant, great drive from Taylor as well, and your entire top 5 there with that fuel save race.
It was intriguing from start to finish. Let's take a look at your race results presented by Carnox. Robert Lechka III went from 2 seconds to 3.4 seconds in the span of a few laps once he got the green light on gas to beat Alexander Van de Sant for win number 4. Matt Taylor rounded out the top 3. How about a 2 through 4, in fact, for Raceverse, with their black and red cars mixtured on in. Greg Forsyth and Dean Mull round out the top 5. 6th went to AJ Musselman, with Barrett Rolfe covering to 7th after having a pit in the late stages. He closed up the gap to 19 seconds. Nick DeGroot, the first driver 1 lap down, did help Alechka III a lot to secure a team victory. Joe Branch, Vern Hawkins III, your top 10. Behind them, it was Brian Beard on the 11th, with Matt Houston rolling as slow as 180 miles per hour to make it to the checkered flag. He comes home 12th. Mike Rigney, Tony Showen, Trevor Lowe, the top 15. Ron Hacker, Charles T., George Zotto, Jeff Gion, and Alexis Newsom. A rough day for Newsom. He did a strong performance for the points, 2 laps down instead. Chris Fowler finishes the race as well, 2 laps down. Paul Jenkins suffered technical issues with under 10 laps to go, finishing 7 down. Matt Wagner suffered side pod damage early in the race, finished 53 laps down. And the only caution involved Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Alex Guillon, and Christopher, who all DNF'd before the 10 laps in mark of this event. Fastest lap to Barrett Rolfe. That brings us to our HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com. Don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. Let's dive straight into HyperX Victory Lane, where Robert Malechka III is celebrating victory number 4 of the season. First things first, Robert. Very tight on the gas. You just make it, and in fact pull away 1.4 seconds in the final 5 laps to win it.
Yeah, I knew, going to the last pit stop, I stretched it as long as possible, and it looked like I went as far as anyone. So I knew I was in probably the best shape. But then once I got in clean air out of the pits, I'm like, dang, I can't make it in clean air. So I dropped back to my teammate Nick, and he really helped me there at the end.
So that was intentional there to drop. It was 5 seconds you dropped back to him.
Yeah, whoever was in P2, I tried to hook onto them, but they were just going all out pushing, so they probably couldn't make it. So, might as well just drop back to my teammate, reliable source. And then I had a gap of 2.5 seconds on Alex there. So just kind of playing the gap game and made it work to the end.
Now, the interesting thing to note is you enter today, when it comes to races counting in the standings, with 2 less total than many of your championship rivals. But you've been essentially the most successful victory-wise in the Speedway Series, now leading the way with 4 victories. How do you weigh yourself now for that championship fight, knowing you've been very dominant, you've been very quick, and now may have just entered the conversation, entering 93 points back before Chicagoland?
Yeah, in the moment, or like right now, I don't think I'm in it yet. I would definitely need, I think, Barrett to have a pretty bad finish to even have a chance. But, if I keep, ticking off wins like I am right now, might have an okay chance, but I'll need some luck to go my way.
Thank you very much for your time, Robert. Congratulations on the run.
Yep, thanks, guys.
Robert Malechka III comes away with victory number 4. For factory-backed, Alexander Van de Sant tried to find lightning in a bottle twice. He was able to save gas at Kentucky for a victory. Almost came away with a victory here today at Chicagoland. And keep in mind, it was a tough task from end of longest line to second, Alex, for you.
Started second to last again. Same thing at Kentucky and Atlanta. With the field size, if there's any race to take in EOL, it was this one, I guess. But that early caution opened up the fuel strategy, and I honestly, it was a lot tighter than I expected it to be. I thought mileage, I thought that was like the easy number to hit, but it was not. It just worked out in the end. Was able to drive up through the field and save enough to be able to stay out.
What did you feel you needed to get yourself to Molechka III to have a shot to battle with him for the race victory? Because it seemed Molechka III just was able to build up that buffer once he got the green light.
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot better track position after that caution. I don't know where he restarted, but I was further to the back. I'd made a bit of progress in that initial run, but it wasn't enough. And then in the middle stint, we would get these gaps through the field, and if the group in front of you is fighting, if you just let the guy in front of your group run single file, run the line, use the whole track, they could easily catch the group and take a couple laps, but they do it. But some drivers just didn't realize it, so I had to chill back and wait behind 4 different drivers, just battling and losing 2 seconds over the middle stint. So if I was able to control that a bit better, then maybe could have been closer at the end. But that was frustrating. But glad I was still able to get second. Always going to be happy with that.
Now let's talk about the closing stretch, because this is the final race for the month of August for this series. Now we move over to the month of September. Your thoughts for the closing stretch of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just honestly taking it race by race, trying to get these good results. Pocono should be interesting. It's pretty neat, and this car should get kind of spread out like this does, but maybe a little less packy at the start. And then we've got 2 short tracks coming up as well, which I love them in the IR18, but with the tire model and the aero model on this car, they can be a little weird. So, they could be fun. So, but yeah, really looking forward to those.
Congratulations on the charge for the field today, Alex.
Thanks, Justin.
Alexander Van de Sant from 22nd to 2nd today. Matt Taylor has been a revelation when it comes to the Lionheart Speedway Series and Lionheart as a whole. He came home with probably one of the most quiet top 3s of the season for you, Matt. 3rd place run today. First of all, talk us through it where you were actually clutching coasting at some point.
Yeah, I kind of found that I could, at least felt like I could carry that run from the draft into the corner, and they didn't really want to go anywhere with it, so I was trying to push the clutch in to see if I could make a little bit more fuel out of it. It was an interesting night. The race just kind of came to me, and I just didn't really do a lot of crazy stuff, just kind of rode around and committed to that fuel save to where I was willing to run slow by myself if I had to make it.
It was a very intriguing one indeed, and of course, we've talked a little bit about the championship fight when it comes to how things have played out. You're also in the mixture of that conversation a little bit further back. What's kind of that thought process now for your positioning for the Lionheart Speedway Series fight for the championship?
So I think the big thing here that I have is I have 2 drops that a lot of people don't have. I have a 13th and a 10th in the bank that I can basically use at any time. So I'm kind of looking for a race or something here where maybe I can go off strategy, or I can try something risky to maybe sneak in that win. But if I can keep grabbing these podiums, maybe I don't need them. We'll just have to see how it plays out.
And for on that, and for those who don't know as well, you happened to make a venture to Matt into stock car races as well and won a championship there as well in some Roval racing.
Yeah, that was a ton of fun. Jumping into a car, it's a little bit like driving that Lotus 79 where it slides around, and except there's no downforce on it, and then you take tire wear to an extreme. So going out, kind of taking care of tires, I like driving around a car like that, and where you really have to drive within limits. You're not just able to push flat out every lap, and there's some tire management involved. But kind of branching out a little bit and getting some experience in a bunch of different cars has been a ton of fun.
Looked like a ton of fun for you as well tonight in this race. Congratulations, Matt, on the run.
Thank you.
I'd like to congratulate Matt Taylor on the top 3 finish. I'd like to thank him, Alexander Van de Sant, Robert Muchka III for taking the time to speak with us during post-race coverage. Your thoughts, Andrew, on how things played out, because I'm not sure if we expected Chicago to turn out to a fuel mileage race we seen tonight coming in.
I don't think I expected it, but I'm not that surprised either. These 1.5 miles, when you get a clean race like Lionheart is so capable of giving us, it can often turn into something like this, and I think that's what we saw today. Is we just saw a whole bunch of really clean racing. We had the one incident early on, and then everybody sort of cleaned up their act, settled down, hunkered down, and then just said, okay, we're going to take what this race gives us. And that really turned into one heck of an intriguing finish to that race on whether they could or couldn't make it. And it turned out that the 6 drivers who could make it really had a good finish at the end there.
Your thoughts for Pocono, where, if my memory serves right with the DW12, we've seen 7 wide in real-world action before at Pocono.
Yeah, Pocono is going to be a wild one for sure. I think that particularly in this car, where we have as powerful a draft as you can have with this car and the type of action that we've seen at Chicagoland, I think that Pocono is going to be a really intriguing race. It's one of those tracks where you have to be able to master all 3 corners and do each one well, and the person who can master those 3 corners the best will probably end up on the top of the podium at the end of the day.
On that note, we'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's exciting action for the Lionheart Speedway Series. We'd like to take the time to thank the sponsors for Lionheart Racing action. First, with the title sponsor for the Speedway Series, the DMLC Racing Channel. Looking for entertaining sim racing content? Look no further than the DMLC Racing Channel. Follow former Lionheart Retro Series Driver of the Year Mark Cohn's racing escapades as he battles for wins and avoids wrecks with cat-like reflexes, all while providing commentary sure to make you laugh, cry, or both. Follow along by subscribing to the DMLC Racing Channel on YouTube and like his Facebook page at the DMLC Racing Channel. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com, and don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. The SimExperience AccuForce Pro V2 is the premier professional simulation racing steering system. Due to its incredible realism, it's the groundbreaking direct drive motor control system, providing you a driving experience that's second only to the real thing. For more information on the entire SimExperience ecosystem, visit simexperience.com. For sim racers, the buttkicker Gamer 2 or Simulation Kit adds the missing driver to car connection, bringing more realism to your sessions. By accurately responding to in-game audio, you can feel the track like never before, providing increased vehicle handling and faster lap times. Are you ready for the most immersive experience in sim racing? For more information, visit thebuttkicker.com, and don't forget to use the promo code LION2021 for 20% off orders. Minus 273 is the premier name in karting gloves. Their interesting gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable polyspandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. Don't forget to also use Minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off orders. And it's not just those 5 names, but so many more, and all the partners at the Lionheart Racing Series that help run smoothly. To learn more about them, visit lionheartracingseries.com. You can also find out more about the information. 3 competitions that the Lionheart sanctioning body runs. It's been a competitive day and a competitive night for racing from Chicagoland Speedway. Next time the Lionheart Racing Series hits the track is this Wednesday for its IndyCar Series for the Carnox Grand Prix of Phillip Island, presented by SimSnap Photography. That takes place August 25th at 10:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:35 p.m. Pacific. With that, it's time to say goodbye. For Arjuna Kankipani and Drew Kinsella, I'm Justin Prince. Thank you for watching RaceSpot.tv and ESTV's coverage of tonight's action. Congratulations to Robert Watchker III, your winner from Chicagoland.